Assalamu alaikum. Today we'll be taking a short peek at Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. Tom's Cabin was first published in a serialized form in 1851 and 52 and had a great impact on the readers of the North, stirring up a civil war with its stark dramatizing of the brutal experiences of the blacks in the South. The novel mainly tells the story of Uncle Tom and Eliza and the people they come across, both white owners and black slaves, and their treatment of each other in the southern plantation. All of these incidents are based on real life incidents. It seems Stowe spends or devotes quite a few pages authenticating them. Stowe herself, coming from an abolitionist family, felt very deeply about the black plight, especially the Fugitive Slave Act, which legalized sending back the freed slaves to their owners, which were irrespective of how inhuman treatment they've had, or like the escapees were supposed to be sent back to the slave owners. So it was quite painful for her, and she wanted to voice it out through her writing. So, despite the book holding a firm position, a strong position in the American literary canon, for Stowe, it was just a vehicle to convey the message she strongly felt needed to be spread, and it did. It shook the very foundation of the Confederacy, right, and started up a civil war. So the setting, when you look at it, it basically, there are several settings. There are mainly two protagonists. Even though the titular character Uncle Tom is the main focus, you cannot deny that Eliza Harris also shares the same limelight, because they both stand in the center in the Kentucky farm. It's a Kentucky farm, Shelby's plantation, where their story began. Okay, so while Uncle Tom goes down south, Eliza goes north. Uncle Tom is, with each step, is going to his doom, whereas Eliza is moving towards freedom step by step. And she takes great pains and trouble to risk, and the main impetus for her to take such risk is her son Harry, who is about to be sold off with Uncle Tom, right? So there are several settings. Actually, here I've mentioned only Shelby's plantation and St. Clair's household, because these are the two most benevolent slave owners. There are others like Simon Legree's farm, or there are several other farms which we do not really see here. So each one gives you a different perspective or different attitude towards slavery. Some believe that slavery is fine, some justify slavery with Christian teachings, some use the Christian teachings. It's like you have to remember the timeline in which this was written. It is the reawakening of the Christian faith. Um, no, instead of a more punitive kind of religion that they were accustomed to, they are re-understanding, trying to understand Christianity in a new light, where all men are equal in the eyes of God. So that in itself negates the practice of slavery. So there are several characters. We will work through them and gradually get an understanding of the book. So Uncle Tom would be the moral center who endures and resists dehumanizing effects of slavery. Now, his resistance is a kind of a passive resistance, and more more of a Christian resistance compared to George Harris' resistance. I would call George Harris a true hero here, and Eliza a true hero, because they have been given a certain hand by the fate, but they take initiatives to turn their fate, to change their destiny. And they come across all sorts of obstacles, and they're not bowed down by it. So it's a here Uncle Tom, even though the main protagonist, we we are made to see through him this um, this agreement, this acceptance of slavery by the slaves themselves, because it has been drilled into them that it is legally binding. So a slave that is once bought feels that they have to stay with the owner no matter what, otherwise they would be breaking a promise. And God Himself has justified it. At least that's the conditioning, mental conditioning that they go through that makes them stay in the first place. So Eliza Harris symbolizes the maternal strength of enslaved women. Basically, I said that the impetus behind her escape, the struggles to escape, to confront all obstacles, lies in her urge to protect her son Harry. Now, Eva Sinclair is a young girl, a small girl, who has a profound impact on every character that comes in contact with her, whether it be Uncle Tom or Ophelia or you know, or Topsy, because Topsy is quite resistant to any kind of teaching or transformation. But Eva's unconditional love sort of changes Topsy to become the human that she eventually does as she grows under the care of Ophelia. Now, Simon Legree is the main antagonist of the story because you see all the other characters undergoing transformations, having change of heart, but Simon Legree does not. He, to the end, he continues to be awful, continues to be bad. Then there are several other characters we'll be looking into. I have left out a few. Aunt Chloe would be Uncle Tom's wife, who is very important in the sense that she well, she has to go through the pain of separation from her husband, but then she is content, in the sense that she would be able to hear about him often enough, and she has her children to look forward to raise in this atmosphere of peace that they have, because Arthur Shelby's farm is the only farm that they know where slaves are treated as humans, right? So she is glad to stay behind. Then another important character that I have not listed here would be Haley. Mr. Haley is the slave trader. So Arthur Shelby, going bankrupt, wants to save his plantation. So he has to sell Uncle Tom and another slave. And that another slave turns out to be Harry, that is Eliza Harris and George Harris' son. So once Eliza comes to know, overhears that her son is being sold off, she takes him and escapes. So Haley also is a very important character. Black Sam and Andy, they are funny and intelligent slaves who try to help Eliza by delaying the progress of the slave hunters. The slave hunters are sent out. Tom Loker and Mark are sent out by Haley to capture Eliza and Harry, but Black Sam and Andy, at the orders of Mrs. Shelby, try to delay their pursuit, thereby helping Eliza escape. Now, George Shelby is Arthur Shelby and Mrs. Shelby's son, who Uncle Tom has been mentoring. Both Uncle Tom and George have a very close bond, but unfortunately, George is unable to help Uncle Tom unless it is too late. Mr. Sims is a neighbor of Arthur Shelby who has already freed his slaves and helps Eliza in her escape. Mr. Wilson is a factory owner, a factory manager who works with George Harris, Eliza's husband. So Mr. Wilson is sent out to capture George, but then he has a change of heart as they have this argument, this conversation, you could call it, about the necessity of slavery and how slavery does not really conform to any kind of religion or does not conform with anything, with any nation, national politics, or you know, it is unethical. So Mr. Wilson undergoes a change of heart. Augustine, Mary, and Ophelia, they belong to the St. Clair family. Augustine is Evangeline's father, and Mary, Evangeline's mother. Ophelia is a cousin of Augustine who is brought to take care of Evangeline because Marie is too conceited, too selfish to take care of anyone. In fact, Marie does not change at all. Her rigid views on how slaves are meant to be treated as animals because they don't have any emotions, they cannot think like white people. That's the attitude that Marie has. So Ophelia too has undergoes a great deal of change over time. She sees how Uncle Tom is with Eva, and uh, and she even adopts Topsy, a slave girl, and raises her as her own child. And so Ophelia too change and does change. Augustine dies eventually after Eva has passed away. Even though Augustine had promised Uncle Tom that he would let him free, before he could set him free, Augustine is killed. Then Adolphe and Mammy, they are both slaves. Then Emmeline is a young slave um, bought by Simon Legree uh, for his uh, for his uh, for his personal use, but eventually she manages to escape with the help of Cassie, an older uh, slave at the Simon Legree farm. Tom Loker and Marx, as I've said already, they are both slave hunters sent out in pursuit of Eliza and Harry. Kudjoe and Dinah. Tom Loker and Marx, they too change because see Tom Loker has been pursuing them for so long and ultimately he's about to catch them that he gets shot. But then he is nursed back to health by Quakers who are helping Eliza and George in their escape to Canada. Kudjoe and Dinah, they are both slaves at the Senator Bird's household, and they are both very sympathetic of Eliza. Senator Bird and Mrs. Bird. Well, Senator Bird basically is a very interesting character because he seems to pass bills mm, um, that are very pro slavery. But when he sees slavery in its real form and physical form of Eliza and Harry, he gets to sympathize with them. He understands slavery for the first time. So, this is very similar to what we all experience. Anything in abstract form does not really make sense unless we are confronted with it, right? John Von Tromp is um, another owner who has freed his slaves and here helps Eliza escape. Lucy and her kid. There is this one short anecdote of how there is this one slave whose child is sold to another slave owner, and Lucy jumps out of the boat and drowns herself in grief. Phineas Fletcher is another slave who is on the run and joins George's family, the Harris's family. The blacksmith. You see at the beginning when after um, Haley has bought Uncle Tom, he admonishes Haley and tells him how unethical slavery is, and he should take good care of Uncle Tom. So there are several other characters. We have just like elaborated a bit on Augustine Sinclair, Topsy, George Harris, and Cassie. Cassie again is a very interesting character because she seems to be very wise and knows to use her wit. Um, she not only saves herself but saves Emmeline from a terrible fate. And also, she happens to be Eliza Harris's mother, which we find out towards the end. So, the main plot is about Uncle Tom, Eliza Harris, and Eva Sinclair we've added here because she seems to have a great impact on Uncle Tom spiritually. And not only Uncle Tom, Topsy, Ophelia, they all seem to hover around Eva's aura, right? Then this is the storyline. This is not the full end storyline because see there is an introduction to the Shelby plantation which is in Kentucky. Then Eliza's escape north. Eliza goes through the Mississippi River, the Ohio River, and then finally crosses the border and finally settles down in Montreal in Canada. While Uncle Tom after he's sold, he travels down south and ends up in New Orleans. Um, and in the meantime, while he's traveling on the boat, he saves this little girl, Evangeline, who convinces the father to buy Uncle Tom. That's how he ends up in Sinclair's household. And Sinclair, Augustine Sinclair, and treats him really well. Uncle Tom and is what do you call it, given the task of a coachman for Marie. Marie, even though she tries to abuse Uncle Tom, he bears it well because he has the support of especially, first of all, he has his faith. Then he is spiritually connected to Augustine and Eva Sinclair. And he himself is characteristic of a morally upright man. Despite the position he holds of a slave, he is being respected by all, black and white alike, all alike. So he has, has a great influence on the people around him, and they, it's a kind of a transformative stage for Ophelia to see a black man be so much better than any other white person she has come across. So before he could be set free, Augustine dies, and he is sold to Simon Legree. Now the real brutality of the slavery could be seen depicted in the Legree plantation, where all the slaves are beaten up, they are made to live in inhuman conditions, made to do jobs, chores that are brutal, taxing to the limit. So here he sacrifices himself for the sake of protecting those weaker than him, and ends up being beaten up by Sambo and Chimbo, who regret later. Sambo and Chimbo, they, after beating Uncle Tom, they are so remorseful that they end up crying, weeping. But now towards the end, we are shown that Simon Legree does not really change at all. He just goes out to have a drink, whereas all the others have had huge transformations towards their attitudes towards slavery. So George Shelby finally comes to rescue Uncle Tom, but it is too late. But then he promises never to buy a slave in his life ever. And he meets up Emmeline and Cassie. They all travel together towards north, and Cassie is found to be the mother of Eliza Harris, and they also meet Madame de Toux, who happens to be George Harris' sister. They all end up happily living in Montreal, free people. Yes, there are several themes, but the main one would be slavery, of equality, of justice, of Christian faith, of manipulation of any faith to justify um, man's brutality. Right? That that could be taken up as a very important theme here. The technique is quite vivid. She portrays. It's very heartfelt. She portrays it in such a manner that you could actually relate to all the incidents that she is mentioning here. So ultimately, the purpose with which Stowe wrote this novel is served, in that it has made a huge impact, has transformed the lives of several thousands of slaves, and helped them live free lives. So that's about it, I guess. Its impact is still continuing, its influence is still visible. There are naysayers and there are naysayers. There are people who condemn Uncle Tom for being very stereotypical and servile, and the portrayal of the blacks have been criticized in several places. The portrayal of whites have been criticized in several places. But irrespective of all criticism, the book is, well, the book will continue to remain in our reading list for a very long time to come. I hope we can all stand up for justice and see things as they are. Thank you.